Let's talk about some best practices and anti-patterns, mostly for the express purpose of seeing a little bit more of what a Tailwind class system looks like. And then what we're going to spend the most of our time doing today is just building lots of little things over and over and over again until we get the muscle memory in place to feel like we know Tailwind like the back of our hand. So there are just some kind of basic concepts that we will then refer to. So I'm going to just put a few little like place markers in your brain so I can reference them later effectively. So when you import Tailwind CSS, it uses CSS layers, which are a modern CSS feature. They are not Tailwind specific. They are ways to kind of have different layers of the cascade that you put in a given order so that like anything happens over one layer, so on and so forth. We have one for the theme. This one is special. All of the kind of CSS variables that we define on the theme layer then become utility classes that we can use. So let's say you do not like the colors that Tailwind comes with out of the box, right? You can go ahead and redefine those CSS variables, and now they'll mean different things. Let's say you have like a color that is like brand, right? You can make, a new color that is brand instead of blue and use that everywhere. And, success, error, warning, stuff along those lines. You can add classes, you can add colors, you can remove colors. You can change what the default font size is or the default font just by defining new CSS variables. The only thing that you have to keep in mind is that if you would like them to then turn into Tailwind classes, they need to be on that theme layer. And again, we will see all these things. We're just doing the kind of high level at this point first. Then you have a base layer, which is like all the times when you would style stuff like, if you need to style like what body is, or the base, the kind of base HTML elements. Okay, this is, lists, input fields, so on and so forth. Now, if I was to channel like the official like stance of the Tailwind team, they'd be like, you probably don't even need to do that. You should probably just have components that you put those classes on and use. And they're not wrong, right? Because like if you decide like, we'll actually see this at one point, but if you decide like all inputs should look like this, well, if you want to do something clever where you have like an input that looks like it has a button inside, then you need to take all those styles off that input, right? And so a lot of times just keeping your base elements and putting the utility classes in your markup is usually going to work out better for you. But if there are reasons or, all sorts of things, especially if you're migrating like on a brand new code base, sure, then we all know that like sometimes we don't get to work in green fields all the time. The base layer is where you style all of those kind of just raw base elements in HTML. And then you've got your components, which is more like if you had like a particular button, so on and so forth. And then this @utility property, which we'll see later as well, we can make one-off little helpers as we go along. So like I need to add an additional class to everything Tailwind gives me, but I need to add this one special class that we use. You just do @utility, the name of that class, and now it is in there as well. The nice thing when we get to the tooling in a second is, like I said before, there is like a quote-unquote learning curve. That said, if you use Visual Studio Code, at least, which is the only editor I use, other than ones that are just VS Code and Wolf's Clothing, you can get this Tailwind IntelliSense plugin, which gives you autocomplete, because who doesn't love that? And so anything you use with @utility or on the theme layer, like your CSS will just work if you ignore all this. Right? But it won't get stripped out. If you don't use these layers and you don't use these tools, everything will work just fine. Tailwind won't know to go looking for them to strip them out. You won't get them in IntelliSense, so on and so forth. Everything will be okay, but like you will just not be totally optimized.
Do the order of the CSS layers matter? For example, does components override base?
Yes, so the order matters, but Tailwind did the order. The order you write it in doesn't matter. Right? When like the library or the person or whoever sets up the layers can basically say, here are the orders of the layers. Tailwind has done that already, right? And so your theme happens and then base happens and then the components happen. So you can write them in any order, right? There is a line, and this is just, again, like you can look at the MDN docs for layers. I looked at them, I was like, I will use this one day, I never did. because I just use Tailwind. But like, you can define the order of the layers, but that's done on the Tailwind level. You can, in the way that you define them in your CSS, it doesn't matter. That's kind of one of the perks of layers is that like it sets that order. So like, because otherwise in CSS, like which one came first, which is easy if you have one CSS file, hard if you have a bunch. So layers let you kind of define which one comes first.